Imagine a bright September morning in rural Zimbabwe, 1994. School kids are outside on their mid-morning break, laughing and playing in the dirt. Then, out of nowhere, a silver object silently drops from a cloudless sky and lands in the bushfield right next to their playground. 62 children stop and stare as small figures with enormous dark eyes step out and look directly at them. No adults saw it. Only the children. And 30 years later, almost all of them still swear it really happened. This is the Ariel School sighting, one of the most famous and most fiercely debated UFO events in history. What makes it so powerful is who the witnesses were: 62 children between the ages of 6 and 12, each telling the same story within minutes of each other. In this video, we walk through exactly what happened that morning, the strange message the kids say they received, the world-class investigation that followed, and the skeptical case that tries to tear it all down. By the end, you get to decide for yourself. And if this kind of mystery is your thing, hit subscribe right now, because we break down a new unbelievable case every single day. The date was September 16, 1994. At a small private school just outside Ruwa, a town about 20 kilometers southeast of Zimbabwe's capital, Harare. Around 10 in the morning, during recess, children reported seeing a bright light in the sky. Then, according to the eyewitness accounts, a silver disc-shaped craft descended and landed on a patch of open ground beyond the school's fence. The kids said between 1 and 4 beings came out of the craft, small figures dressed in black, with large, slanted, almond-shaped eyes. Some children said the beings communicated without speaking. Others said they simply stood and stared. One thing every single child agreed on: this was not an airplane. They were adamant about that, and the teacher who came out to see what the commotion was about arrived too late to see the craft itself. Here is where the story gets truly strange. Several of the children later said they received a message, not in words, but telepathically, directly into their minds. The message was about the environment. One fifth grader told investigators the beings warned that something bad is coming, and that pollution must stop. Another child said the beings were upset about how humans treat the planet. This detail, the environmental warning, is what separates the Ariel case from almost every other UFO sighting. It is a message, a plea, delivered by children, the only witnesses willing to say it out loud without fear of being called crazy. For believers, that consistency is the case's greatest strength. For skeptics, it is the exact point where the whole story starts to crack. The world reacted fast. Within days, a BBC correspondent named Tim Leach arrived and filmed interviews with the children. A local UFO researcher named Cynthia Hind also came to the school, and she did something brilliant. She asked each child to draw pictures of what they had seen. The drawings, dozens of them, show the same thing, over and over: a disc-shaped craft, small figures with big dark eyes. Then, 2 months later, a Harvard University professor of psychiatry named John Mack arrived. Mack was a Pulitzer Prize-winning researcher who studied people who claimed to have been abducted by aliens, and he interviewed the children at length. He concluded they were telling the truth. For the first time, one of the world's most respected universities seemed to be taking alien encounters seriously. But here is where the skeptics step in, and their case is not weak. Researcher Brian Dunning argued that Hind interviewed the children in groups of 2 to 6, with the other kids allowed to listen in. That is a recipe for cross-contamination, where one child's story influences everyone else's. He also pointed out that John Mack only arrived 2 months after the event, giving time for the story to solidify. And Mack, an outspoken environmentalist, may have prompted the pollution angle that was completely absent from the earlier interviews. The drawings, skeptics argue, prove nothing, because children who believe they saw something draw what they believe. Add in the fact that the beings were described differently, from 1 to 4 of them, and the details get slippery fast. So which is it, a genuine contact event, or a classic case of children's imagination snowballing out of control? Here is what makes this case so hard to dismiss. The witnesses grew up. In 2020, several former students were interviewed for the documentary The Phenomenon, and as adults, looking back 30 years, they still insisted the sighting was real, describing the fear, the silence, and the strangeness in vivid detail. In 2021, a writer named Za, who had been a pupil at Ariel that day, spoke publicly about seeing a bright light come down and beings disembark. Many of these people have nothing to gain. They became accountants, teachers, regular working adults, and yet they never changed their story. That long-term consistency, across dozens of independent witnesses, is genuinely rare in UFO lore. Either 62 children shared the same vivid hallucination, or something truly extraordinary happened in that field in Ruwa. So what is the truth about the Ariel School? The honest answer is, nobody knows for certain. The skeptics have a real point about group interviews and memory contamination. But the sheer number of witnesses, the eerie consistency of their drawings, and the fact that they have stuck to their story for 3 decades keeps this case alive. It remains one of the strongest pieces of evidence for the idea that we are not alone. What do you think happened in that field in 1994? Drop your theory in the comments, and if you made it this far, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next mystery is already on the way. See you in the next one.